Shabbat Shalom. About 800 years ago, the great Jewish poet Yehuda Halevi wrote, Libi b'mizrach v'ani b'sof ha'ma'arav. My heart is in the east, but I am in the uttermost west. Of course, he was talking about there he was outside the land of Israel looking in. His heart breaking that he couldn't be there, that he couldn't do more to stand up for Israel. That's how I felt this past week. In the midst of the celebrations of the retaking of Jerusalem in the Six-Day War in 1967, the Supreme Court of the United States of America comes down with a ruling affirming what was really a debate between the President of the United States and Congress, saying that indeed the President of the United States has the right to declare what the passport can say where it says place of birth. Because what had happened is that there was a young boy born in Jerusalem, and he wanted to put where it says in the passport, in his American passport, place of birth, he of course wanted it to say Israel. But it's been long-standing policy in the United States of America, really before 1967, that in that line on the United States passports where it says place of birth, not to write Israel as you would any other country. Or even if the child had been born in Tel Aviv, it still would have said Israel. But rather for Jerusalem. What do they write? Jerusalem. And the answer is because the United States has not fully recognized Jerusalem as part of Israel. The United States has not fully recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And so even the United States Embassy is not located in the capital of Israel. It's located in Tel Aviv. And it was a clear statement that the President of the United States has the right, as the President has since the inception of the country, to declare on the passport where it says place of origin what can be written there. It's not Congress's right, the President's right. And so just as presidents have said since before 1967, it will continue to say for those Americans born in Jerusalem, not that they were born in Israel, but that they were born in Jerusalem. And when I read that, all the wind came out of my sails. I said, really, you've got to be kidding me. Here we are in 2015. Jerusalem has been a part of Israel since 1967. You're going to say that Jerusalem is not the capital of Israel? I wanted to say, look at this great country, the only real democracy in the Middle East, and you're going to insult it in this way. I wanted to say, here is little Israel, born in 1948, that's now become a startup nation. It's become the birthplace of all this technology, and you're going to say that Israel cannot recognize Jerusalem as its capital. Here you're going to say that this little country born out of nothing in the wilderness after the Holocaust, that actually gave life to the desert and made the desert bloom, you're going to continue to insult it in this way? Of course, I didn't really say any of that. But I wanted to. I said, this is my Israel. This is the one I love. This is the Israel whenever I have an opportunity to go on vacation. And Rebecca and I said, oh, should we do Hawaii? No. Should we do anywhere else other than northern Michigan? We think about Israel. This is our Israel. This is the birthplace of our ancestors. This is the future homeland of the Jewish people. They're going to do this to my Israel, to our Israel, the Israel that I love. And sure enough, as I'm in the midst of these emotions, and in the midst of wanting to jump out of my chair and literally defend the United States, literally defend Israel to the United States, and I started gathering together my business cards of Congresswoman Lawrence and Senator Peters and Senator Stabenow, and I was getting my guns together, proverbially speaking, when what comes across next? It's actually a communication from the conservative, the Masorti movement. I don't know how many of you have been tracking, but about a month or so ago, there was going to be a bar mitzvah of a group of special needs children in a town in Israel called Rehovot. And there they were going to have a bar mitzvah for these special needs kids. They had adjusted the service to make it appropriate for their abilities. And where were they going to hold this modified service? In a Masorti, in a conservative synagogue. So here the children had been preparing at least for 6 months in preparation for this special bar mitzvah that they were going to do, they were going to lead, they were going to feel affirmed in that way. And about a week before the bar mitzvah, the mayor of Rehovot, who happens to be Haredi, gets wind of what's going on, cancels the bar mitzvah, says if they want to have a bar mitzvah, they have to do it in an Orthodox synagogue, and they have to do it the way that the Orthodox rabbis want to do it. This is my Israel. And so what happened is the conservative movement protested. They protested so much so that the president of Israel, what's the name of the president of Israel? Rivlin, right? The president of Israel gets involved. And he says, I have an idea, we'll take it out of the religious, we'll bring this wonderful opportunity for a bar mitzvah of special needs kids into my house, the president says. We'll have a conservative rabbi officiate and we'll have an Orthodox rabbi officiate. Everyone says, okay, it's a nice compromise. The kids won't have to learn anything new. The parents were happy. The conservative movement said, we're willing to do that compromise. Then, what comes? The program in the mail for this bar mitzvah. And who gets left off of the program? The conservative rabbi. Once again, the state of Israel, now even at the top with the president of the state of Israel, really comes to affirm what is known lovingly as the status quo, which is that the Orthodox have control over Israel. And I'm reading all this, and I'm saying, really? Really? For special needs bar mitzvah, they can't hold it at a conservative synagogue? Can this be the Israel I love? I'll tell you, that part of Israel I don't love. And when we hear the stories of the organization called the Women at the Wall, right, we know that women are prohibited from praying freely at the wall. Women are prohibited from reading Torah at the Kotel, the western wall of the Jewish people. I said, really? This is the Israel I love? I was reading something interesting. A professor at Bar Ilan University, he came to describe Israel in really an interesting way. He said, all Israel, most of Israel, secular Israelis and the most Orthodox, agree in the same vision of God. They believe in a God who's Orthodox. They believe in a God who loves rules. They believe in an unbending God who affirms what the Orthodox do and whose priority really is on the ritual side of Jewish life. Secular Israelis and Orthodox Israelis absolutely believe in this kind of God. Now we know that the Orthodox Israelis believe in that kind of God. How can it be that the secular Israelis believe in that kind of God? It's very easy. And according to this Bar Ilan University professor, he says, they absolutely believe in that God because they reject it. And they become secular, or at worst, atheist. Because that's the only kind of God they understand. And so because of that image, that depiction of a God who loves rules so much so that he's willing to forego a bar mitzvah for special needs children, most Israelis just say, we don't need that kind of God. And this professor goes on to say that in Israel they really have a choice. Either they believe in God or in man. Either they believe in religion or they believe in the state of Israel. In Israel, they don't feel like they can have both. This is my Israel. This is the Israel I love. That brings us to our Torah portion this week, Parashat Shalach Lecha. And as Eli so beautifully taught us earlier, there, just a couple years into the wilderness wandering, our ancestors stood really prepared, ready to conquer the Promised Land. When Moses decides to send out 12 scouts to scout the Promised Land, he picks one leader from each of the tribes. These are the best of the Israelites. And he sends out one leader from each of the tribes to go out and scout the land, and they go out all over. And the 12 scouts come back. And when Moses asked them what they saw, he told them first exactly what he asked them to do. They reported on who was in the land. They reported on what the land looked like. They reported on the kind of fruit that existed in the land. Who lived there, what the land was like, what the fruit was like. This was exactly Moses' plan. This is what Moses asked them to do. Of course, what's unwritten and what seems implied by the text is that Moses wanted them to come back to give this report to the Israelites and for the Israelites to say, yes, we can do it. We can conquer the land. And in fact, that's what happened. The scouts gave their report. And the very next thing we read in the Torah in our portion this morning is that Caleb ben Yefuneh said, if we have faith in God, together we can go up and conquer the land. But the other 10 scouts, Joshua aside, the other 10 scouts, they came back and said, we're like grasshoppers in their eyes. We can't do it. We can't conquer the land. They'll destroy us. And because of what those 10 scouts said, and then the response of the Israelite nation, the negativity, the lack of faith, the fear, God decides to punish that entire generation and says that all those who were born in Egypt who came out are doomed to wander for 38 more years. And that's how we got to the 40 years. They were doomed to wander until that generation faded away so that a new generation born in freedom could enter the promised land and conquer it the way God had told us we could. Now, of course, the two exceptions to that rule who were able, part of that generation able to enter the promised land, those two exceptions were Caleb and Joshua, because they had faith, because they knew in partnering with God we could do it. We could conquer the land. And so our Torah portion this morning, Parashat Shalach Lecha, comes to teach us that life is very much a part of perspective. Your hashkafa. What are you seeing with your eyes? When I look at the land of Israel, I see my Israel, the one that was born out of virtually nothingness, that gave us a homeland and our home after 2,000 years. This land that is truly a modern miracle, and by and large, 9 out of 10 days, that's what I see with my eyes. We know there are other people, even our own people, who when they look upon Israel, they see the conflict between the Orthodox and the non-Orthodox. They see the prohibition against allowing women to pray at the wall. They see, really, you're not going to allow special needs kids to have a bar mitzvah in the way that they've been training. They see the conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And ultimately, that's why the United States of America has continued to reject Israel as the location of birth for those Americans born in Jerusalem, because they think it might be a carrot or a stick, depending on your perspective, to get Israel to do a better job of pursuing peace. So here we are. And we ask the question, what is our hashkafa on Israel? And I think we have a lot to learn from Israel. We have a lot to gain when we visit Israel, we study about Israel. But here we, American Jews, have something to teach Israel. In Israel, they don't really have such a thing as Jewishness, as Judaism. They have orthodoxy, and they have the statehood. We American Jews can teach them about a God who believes not only in the laws of ritual, which are important and which are mitzvot, which are commandments, but who also believes that we have an obligation to care for our fellow man. We have an obligation to reach out to those in need. We have an obligation to raise up those who are downtrodden. We American Jews can teach our Israeli brothers and sisters that there is a Judaism that offers not only ritual, but the mitzvah, ben adam l'chaveiro, the mitzvot that command us and how we interpersonalize our relationships, how we can reach out to others. This is the God we Jews in America focus on. This is the God that Israelis need to start to recognize as well. So in this parashat of Shalach Lecha, as we stand up in defense of the state of Israel to all those who seek to criticize it, let us remember that Israel has a lot to learn as well. That we can help inspire an Israel that loves not only Jewish ritual, that loves not only the land of Israel, the state of Israel, but who truly reaches out to each and every one of its residents to raise up those who are in need, to truly love our neighbors as ourselves. On this Shabbat of Parashat Shalach Lecha, may we be empowered like the scouts, like Caleb and Joshua, to see that to truly take the promised land, it has to be a partnership between God and the Jewish people. Shabbat Shalom.